Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a 2x hopper speed filtered compactor and box loader by GEG 2055, PyraLeft, and Kartoffel. And this system uses a 36 game tick world clock, as you can see right here in the back. Now, or global clock, sorry. And this is the only downside, in my opinion, of this entire system, and it's very, very cool. So what this system is what it does is it takes your filtered input, so in this case a gold ingot and some of those, and it turns it into blocks of gold right here, puts them in a shulker box, loads it up, and spits it out just like this. So you have a shulker box full of the block form of the thing you're filtering. Now this is really important big for farms and stuff like that, because farms, and especially with technical Minecrafters, we like to make farms that are a little bit crazy. And when we have such crazy outputs, it's nice to have something to do, or to sort them and put them in like this, so that way we can store them in a ninth of the space if compared to just using ingots. Now this system uses some really cool mechanics surrounding quasi-connectivity, and I actually have an experiment over here to break down one of the features of, or how one of these sections work. So let's get straight into it. So this is the main global clock, and how it works is that this lever will lock this hopper through this repeater. So when this is turned off, it will unlock, and it will allow this redstone wire right here to catch up to this repeater, so it will no longer power. So we'll turn on this redstone torch and turn off this redstone torch. This won't cause an update until this signal where it's powered on will turn or go through this repeater and activate this redstone wire right here. What happens then is it will go through this non-powered repeater and power this block and power this unpower this redstone torch, as well as eventually power this redstone torch back into the state where it is right here. But there will be a slight delay in this torch coming back on, which will allow this note block right here to temporarily be powered off. So this allows this observer to run right here and power this line right here, which is one of the outputs of this clock, as well as continue down this observer line and power this block and power these activator rails to power this observer line right here. Now this is the other output, and as you can see right here, as while I was explaining it, I kind of explained the whole loop, as this goes like this, and we use the and to basically power this note block right here, and this is the loop in itself, and this is what runs the clock. Now this output right here is just an activator rail updating an observer, and then this updates a whole observer line and can be stacked as long as you want. And this side is a little bit more complex, and it'll make sense once I go over the individual filters. So this is your typical, I guess you could say, not exactly, but at the start it is your typical double speed item filter, which uses with SSI filtering, which is signal strength independent, which means it doesn't matter if one of these hoppers is overflowed, because the other one won't be affected. Now what happens is when items make their way into this, at a certain point or a certain threshold, it will power over this redstone wire right here. And this is where the SSI kind of stops, and it kind of adapts, because it has the same redstone torch as previously, but we don't actually lock any hoppers in the system. We use overflow to basically prevent all of these hoppers from taking out of the item hopper, because as you can see this right here in this crafter, it's fully filled up, as well as this hopper, and this hopper. So basically no item will be leaving this hopper to fill up any of these until this activates. And how this works is when this unlocks right here, or this wire or this redstone torch unpowers, it'll unpower this redstone wire right here. This will cause this dropper to no longer be constantly getting powered from this powered block through quasi-connectivity. Now what happens then is where this signal comes in. This is a comparator taking a readout from this composter, but when it gets a signal, and because it's in compare mode, it will temporarily send a zero signal. It won't have any output, which will send a pulse across all of these to no longer power any of them. So on this interval, it will power the dropper, or unpower the dropper, which sends an update to this observer. This goes down the observer line and powers the crafter to spit out one gold block into this dropper right here. Now what happens with this crafter right here is, because it no longer has now space, these hoppers start pushing items into this crafter and taking from this hopper, which will take from this hopper right here. So this is how it kind of adapts the filter. Instead of having to lock all the hoppers and have an empty crafter right here, we pre-filled the crafter and use the overflow and clear the crafter to have space to kind of clear and allow the top hopper to clear and go back to its regular state. And basically what happens next is when the items get shot in the dropper, when this observer line fires, it will shoot out and push the item block into the gray shulker box. Now the reason we have such a long clock is because this crafter will take a couple of game ticks to load up completely, because we have 9 slots, which means we'd have 4 hopper action ticks or basically ignoring the delay, we'd have to wait for 4 hopper actions for this to be filled up again to run again. So otherwise we would burn into the supply, and then what will happen is the system will start pulling and break the filter. So that's why I have to have such a specific game delay of 36 game ticks. Now, going to the shulker box, this is where the interesting quasi-connectivity mechanic that I'll explain. So basically, this shulker box is constantly powering this comparator right here, which is outputting to this redstone wire right here and this iron bar right here through the block. Now, when you first actually start filling up a shulker box, it will update this door right here and power this line, but that's not really too much to worry about because that's just priming the system for what happens after. Now, what happens here is this comparator is constantly taking a readout and outputting to this redstone dust right here, which is getting a signal strength of 14, because right over here we have a signal strength of 15 coming from this redstone torch right here, which is outputting a full strength right here. Now, the only case where this updates the observer is if the signal strength increases to 15, because it's not going to decrease because this is a constant source. And when we get a signal strength of 15 is when this comparator reads that the shulker box is completely full. This is a fundamental trick that a lot of people use for their box loaders. There's a few other different ways, but this is one of the main ways. Now, what we do then is, because we realize that, oh hey, this is now at 15, this observer updates and powers this block right here, which will go through this repeater and power this block right here, which sends a signal to here to do some hopper stuff we're going to talk about in a second. What it will also do is power this sticky piston right here to extend this piston up here along with this sand block above it. What happens here is this iron bar will no longer attach to the sticky piston, because it's no longer while it's extending, it's no longer a full block that the iron bar can attach to. So we'll update to remove this connection right here, and this will cause a observer to detect that its position has changed, so it will power and send a signal. Now this will power, or regularly it actually won't power the piston right here, as we can actually test right here. We can go like this. This also works. Basically, as you can see, no matter how much I update this piston, you can see this observer is never ever firing. And that is where this mechanic comes in, but we need to establish another part of it first. Now, what also happens is when this piston comes up here, it blocks this comparator from taking a signal from this shulker box. So what happens then is this goes to 0, which will actually update this redstone wire, but that was just send repeat signal, so that's not important. But what it will do was unpower this iron door right here, which will cause this observer to power this block, the sand block, and as well as the piston right here. And we can actually test this again to show that actually by itself the system is kind of weird and it doesn't work. So I can run this like this, and no matter what I do over here, the piston does not want to fire. So what gives? Why is this running? Well, this is due to a weird game mechanic where I'm not entirely sure why or how this works, but I just know that this is a thing according to the system. So what happens is this observer fires, and exactly 2 game ticks later, this observer fires, and they both act on this piston kind of, and that's what gets the system to power. And we can actually test this with this little experiment right here. Basically, we have a observer that'll detect an update, which we can do, and what will happen is it'll go to power these 2 observers, which will power this observer and this observer through, and because of this observer will power these 2 note blocks, which will update these 2 observers, and this will immediately go to the piston, and 2 game ticks later, when this observer detects that this is gone, it will also power just in the same fashion that this observer powers this slice, or not slice, but this section, and this observer powers this section. And you can see here that the actual piston fires, which is just a really weird mechanic in my opinion, but it works and it makes the system super compact, so we'll take it. So once it breaks the box, we have to worry about, oh, where is this box going to go? Well, this is where the hopper comes into play. This is normally locked by this redstone torch right here, because we don't want to be sucking out the items or filling the box, because that's counterproductive. But this is where the signal we talked about earlier comes in. When this powers this block, it sends a signal to this block to unpower this redstone torch, which will unlock this dropper, as well as unlock this dispenser and this hopper right here. And this will allow, which because of the precise timings of using this repeater here and the delay of the redstone torch, it'll break the box and get sucked down into this item hopper right here and push down into the dropper. Once it's in the dropper, this is where the unpowering of the system becomes important. So when this entire system eventually runs out, this redstone torch will repower. This causes this dropper to power and shoot out the shulker box into this hopper to get another shulker box right here, or as well as also power this dispenser right here. This dispenser is to replace the shulker boxes, which come from the shulker line. As you can see right here, I just have a bunch stored. But what also could happen is the observer line right here that we're from the global clock could also beat this redstone torch to the chase and power this dispenser before. And it doesn't, or it's kind of a weird scenario, but it's just the odd timing of when you actually power this shulker box or when the system runs. But just know that if this system doesn't power it immediately, there is always this redstone torch that'll guarantee that the box gets placed. And yeah, that's the whole system. So now we'll get to see it in action. So I'm gonna run this up here and I'm gonna place this iron or all of these gold ingots right here. And you'll see this will unlock, and we actually need to run the clock. So you can see this clock will start running. And you'll see the observer signals going across every 36 game ticks, which will power this right here, and you'll see all of them reducing because there's a line right here, and this, and you can see it locks. No more observer signals, and this is perfectly stacked as before. Now we have 10 items in the hopper, and everything is fine and dandy. And we can see right here we have blocks in the system. Now, to keep this running, just to show a little bit more, so you can see right here, this is all running well and good, and it's decreasing by 1. But because of the double hopper speed, it's pretty fast and gets the entire stack pretty much finished out really quickly. So what happens when the entire box gets filled up? And because these have such precise tick timings, I'm actually going to slow the game down. So I'm going to slow it down to 1/10 of what the game normally is at. Right here, so you see this will update, and we see the repeater fire, move the piston, precise timings to break it. The hopper's unlocked, so it can go down. And in this case, the observer beat the redstone torch to the chase, so it placed the gray shulker box. And that is the whole system. As you can see right here, we now have 20 gold, or we now have 2 shulker boxes full of gold blocks. Now this can run in sync together if I actually get some more gold blocks, because I put all of mine in the system. If I just fill this up with gold blocks. Oh, I did not want to do that. I'll pull that one more time. If we fill up this entire system with gold blocks, here we go. Just leave it so there's 2 gold blocks left. This system can run both at the same time. You can see that right now. So if I go like this, it'll run both at the same time, and what will happen is it'll buffer the gold blocks that is crafting into this dropper right here, because there's no block or shulker box for it to get shot into. But what will happen is it'll just shoot it into the next time, and that is the whole system. I'm just going to turn off the clock. It is really cool. The only downside is the global clock. I really prefer, and most people really prefer, systems to be internally clocked per their own system, but it is what it is. For what such a compact and such a cheap redstone piece of technology, it's really convenient. And yeah, a pretty great system. Thank you for watching.